Leaders of the world's richest 7 nations are locked behind closed doors as they discuss a plan to rebuild the economy. Leaders are also expected to adopt a health declaration that is aimed at planning better for future pandemics. For an update on these talks, we are joined by SABC News Foreign Editor Sophie Mokoena. A very good evening. Thank you for joining us. Let's look at the G7 leaders who are, of course, expected to discuss and also build back the global economy that's been ravaged by the COVID-19 pandemic. What do you think the declaration will entail?
I think the declaration will revolve around how do you build the infrastructure, because the only way you can address the issue of health and perhaps the pandemics in future, you must have capacity to preempt what's likely to happen. In other words, you have to build strong early warning systems. You must also ensure that your health system are being beefed up and you have enough capacity in terms of staff component. But you are also able to manufacture drugs, you are able to manufacture the vaccines, and you also have strong research units around the world so that they can be able to assist you when you have challenges of pandemics. We saw what South Africa did a few months ago by being able to assist the world to understand how the virus is mutating. And you can only do this kind of work when you continue to invest in research and science. And therefore, you have to build capacity and infrastructure.
Absolutely. I mean, tripped up is the question. South Africa is pushing at that TRIPS wave. Has President Ramaphosa been able to convince leaders on this issue?
The issue of TRIPS waiver is a thorny one. We know that President Joe Biden last month agreed that he does support the position of South Africa and India and other countries, particularly the poorer nations or the low-income countries, on the TRIPS waiver. But you have countries such as Germany, Canada, you also have Britain there, who are reluctant to agree to this. Their argument is that you have people who have invested dollars, pounds, and of course euros in terms of research and also building capacity to develop at the development level of these vaccines, drugs, and also therapeutics for COVID-19. When you decide to allow people now to use that hard work of other people, in future, you are going to have people being reluctant to invest in research. Even countries will not be available to put money on research and also assisting scientists to do the work. And therefore, they want sort of a balanced view on this matter. But clearly, this is not a formal organization. It is just a meeting of like-minded parties or individuals. Therefore, these issues must be ironed out at the World Trade Organization. We know that the director of the World Trade Organization is there, and I think she will be listening. And when she goes back to Switzerland, she will be able, when she's chairing the World Trade Organization Committee on TRIPS and waiver, she will be able to balance the views from both sides to ensure that come November, perhaps the latest, we have a complete position and a text on the table in terms of what needs to happen.
Well, as you alluded to, it's definitely not the ultimate answer, but some argue it is a step in the right direction with a lot of long-term considerations. So we'll continue to track that. But I want to conclude this perhaps by just taking a look at some of the bilaterals that are going to be taking place. Can you walk us through what some of those are going to entail?
Well, earlier on, the Prime Minister of Britain, Boris Johnson, had a meeting with a number of people. Just now he had a meeting with the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. Here the issue is around Brexit and the EU not moving in terms of how they want this process to pan out. But the United Kingdom, on the other hand, saying that they are not going to move. Let's take a listen at what the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson had to say about the tension between UK and European Union.
It's the prime duty of the UK government to uphold the territorial integrity of the United Kingdom. And that's what we're going to do. And we'll do whatever it takes to ensure that.
Well, of course, the South African President Ramaphosa, also had a number of bilaterals today. The President held talks with President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and I think here they were trying to iron out the position of South Africa and India on the issue of TRIPS waiver. Secondly, he met the European Union, this big bloc. You know that EU is the largest trading partner of South Africa in Europe, and therefore he had talks with the leadership of the European Union. He is going to continue with other bilaterals, and I think tomorrow we'll have a sense of perhaps the type of meetings he was engaged in. But he is also going to participate in the meetings. He was part of the meeting that was looking at how do you strengthen health facilities around the world to ensure that should you at some point in time have a problem of health challenges, you are able to deal with those challenges. But you will also participate during the talks around climate change. We know very well some few days ago he did convene a meeting of African countries chairing that committee on climate change, getting a mandate from Africa in terms of Africa's position at the G7 meeting. And we know that Africa is saying all countries must implement the agreement, the climate change agreement, particularly the Paris Agreement. But also countries must take into consideration that the developing countries cannot match the developed nations in terms of reducing the carbon emissions. We know that we are still building the economy on the continent, and many countries are still relying on coal. And therefore you can't just wake up one day and just say, I am not going to use coal anymore. But we know that the developed nations, particularly these 7 industrialized nations, they are very difficult in terms of also doing much better. They want countries such as South Africa to be part of countries that are making commitments in terms of reducing carbon emissions.
Well, thank you very much, Sophie Mokoena, SABC News Foreign Editor, just giving us the latest emerging from the G7 summit.